Welcome to the Mental Game of Poker radio show. I am your host, Jared Tendler, and I'm very excited to have Phil Galfond on the show today. One of the best poker players in the world. You're going to get to hear from him how he learns, how he gets better, what he's doing constantly to improve his game. And of course, he has a new training site out called Run It Once, which can, of course, make you a better player. You don't want to hear from me. Let's get right to the interview. Here he is, Phil Galfond. Phil, thanks so much for coming on today, man. I see you've got a new trading site you've got started up, but before I get to talking about that, I guess I'm first curious. You've done a lot of teaching over the last several years, and I'm curious what you get from coaching, from putting out these videos. Does it actually improve you as a player? Like, what do you get from it?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, it's a lot of things. I mean, to be honest, I really enjoy thinking about the game and figuring things out for myself and being asked strategy questions and asking them myself and exploring, as many layers as I can of poker strategy. And in addition, I like to kind of share what I figured out and continue to figure things out with other people. I definitely do think that teaching improves my game, and it helps me look at the things that I'm doing more in depth. And that is a question. The question you asked is one I get a lot because people ask that, and then in addition they ask, aren't you afraid about giving up information to ask questions for you? But
If they're good questions, I don't mind.
yeah, cool. No, but and people ask, aren't you worried about giving up information to people that play against you a lot? And the answer is, yeah, I do give up a little bit of information, but I think that the amount of learning I do while I'm teaching basically accounts for that, and then actually the challenge of adjusting to my opponents adjusting to me is kind of a fun challenge.
Right. So are you almost trying to figure out what the adjustments are going to be ahead of time?
Yeah, I am. It's interesting because there's some people that I know with certainty are watching my videos, and there are others I don't really know whether they are or not. So I just try to pay attention to how they're playing and figure it out.
Right. So teaching almost makes the game more interesting for you too.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say, for sure. Yeah.
I ask this because I think for me I've experienced this as well, that when you put something out there and it's challenged and it's in some instances criticized, or there's holes being poked at it, that I think that actually helps me to learn. And I wonder if you sort of take that same approach, that when you put something out there, that the ways in which it's challenged helps you to think in ways that you would not have originally.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
So what other ways are you working to improve? Do you talk with a lot of players in addition to coaching and teaching?
Yeah, I've actually always been a training site member myself. I watch a lot of videos, and I mean, even as I've moved up and played higher stakes, I'll still watch plenty of videos from guys who play lower stakes, just because I think you can learn something from anyone really, potentially. And even if they don't teach you anything, people will say things that will bring up ideas that you'll think about, things like that. But I actually am not somebody that does as much away from the table, sitting down, number crunching, hand history reviewing. I forget how I started that sentence, so I don't know how to end it. But I don't do as much of that as a lot of other people. I do, however, think about the game. I think at the table maybe more than almost everybody, and then away from the table, as I'm finished with the session, I just continue to think about the hands I played. And then also, like you said, I talk to a lot of people. I think that's probably the best way to learn is talking strategy with other people who take it seriously.
Do you feel like you're more of an experiential learner in that regard? That like having kind of rich detail of hands, having just played them, or watching hand replay or videos, or even live play videos where you can kind of see the action happening. Is that what sort of sparks your brain more than something more static like a hand history?
I guess so. Yeah, I guess it must be. I do think that I could learn from some things that I don't do as much. Like, there are tools out now, like pro poker tools, where you can go in there and run a bunch of ranges, even in PLO, which is very difficult to do. And and do some number crunching. And there are some situations where there are probably players I play against who have a better understanding of exactly what kind of ranges we each have in those spots. But that's something that I guess I find too tedious, and I found just this has been true my whole life that I learn much better when I'm interested in what I'm learning and the way that I'm learning it, and I like to learn about poker in ways that keep me interested, and I find that's what works for me.
How do you think you got such a interest and passion for the game itself?
That's a good question, actually. I mean, I've played, some form of poker like since I was 12 or 13. Me and my friends were gambling for much more money than we should have been at that point in our lives, and but I never really took it seriously as like a game I wanted to study and improve at until I guess, when I started playing online in college. I think what it is for me is that I'm competitive. I'm competitive with other people, but I'm more competitive with myself. And if I am doing something and I'm not very good at it, I either get good at it or I quit. And I really enjoyed poker, and I didn't like not winning. So it's something that I started to work at and get better at, and then kind of the better I got, the more addicting that was, and it was exciting to improve, and especially in a relatively small, I mean it's bigger now, but a relatively small like community or economy. Like there weren't that many people to compete with. It's not like I was trying to be a professional chess player or some other advanced field of anything in academia or anything. It was like I could see myself progressing towards the highest levels that were being played online, and could kind of see the finish line of I would really, really like to get there, and that kept me very interested and excited.
Right. So having kind of the next step in front of you and kept you challenged and motivated.
Yeah.
Now that you're there, and you've been there obviously for several years now, what keeps you as passionate as interested? Is it, as we were just talking about, the challenge that trying to constantly unfolding in terms of the nuances and the details of the game?
Well, I should say, I mean, I find the game itself interesting just on its own. But yeah, I think that getting to the highest levels is just even that much more motivation because I mean, frankly, it's fun to be considered very good at something, and to play a game that you're usually confident you're better than the people you're playing it with, whether it's for money or not. And so I have a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun, like continuing to work at something that has kind of paid off and that I have done well at.
Did you have dreams about being successful at something when you were a kid?
Yeah, I always did. Usually unrealistic ones. Like I was, I held on to. I was a big football fan when I was young, and I held on to dreams of being a professional football player for far too long, to the point where I was like,
seemed like the linebacker type.
yeah, I was running back.
Okay.
But I mean, I was still holding on when I was like 14, and it was pretty obvious I wasn't going to be taller than 5'7", 5'8", and it just wasn't going to happen.
Right. So then, football eventually goes away. Were there other things that you saw too, or is it just sort of this idea that you had the capability or the desire to be great at something?
There was, I don't know. I think I shifted goals pretty often as a kid, but I definitely always wanted to be very good at something, and I didn't always needed to translate to financial or career success, but it's always been very attractive to me to be very, very good at something. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. Shifting gears to your mental game a bit.
Yeah.
How have you, like, I guess, how important was the slide in your New York City apartment to your mental game, and how are you able to cope without it now?
It was not that important. I actually
Okay.
ended up not using it very often because the main time I'd go downstairs, I guess. I mean, I would go downstairs often, but my bedroom and my office were both upstairs, and downstairs was like the kitchen. So I'd go downstairs and I was hanging out with people, and then also, in the morning to just like eat breakfast and stuff like that. But it's really in the morning. It's a little bit too steep and fast for the morning because you need kind of to make an athletic landing.
Mm.
It's pretty easy to fall. So I didn't really take it in the morning. I wasn't ready for it. And the only other time I took it, like often, was if I was playing and in between hands and I wanted to grab something from downstairs. It was just faster to take the slide and then run up the stairs.
That makes sense.
But no, I'm coping okay without it.
And what are some of the mental game issues? I mean, that you experience? Is it during downswings? Is it any issues with pressure? Where do you see fluctuations in areas that you struggle with?
I mean, I definitely think. I mean, I know that my reputation is as someone pretty level-headed and calm, and well, I do think I'm pretty good at that. I definitely struggle with things that I think a lot of other people do. The toughest for me is when there's kind of the extended downswing, and you're not only upset that you've been obviously losing money and just losing at a game for so long, but you worry about the future, and if there's something, maybe you lost something, maybe your opponents are getting better, and you kind of question whether you're going to be able to win and be as successful as you were again. That I think is the hardest to deal with.
Do you think those questions are a good thing in that at that time?
Hmm. I'm not sure. I've kind of wondered about that back and forth because I know some players, some who are successful, some who are no longer successful, that just have kind of like just like invincible confidence. And when they're losing, they know that they're running bad. They know that they're better than their opponents. And obviously, sometimes that can be great for you, but it can definitely work against you. And I know some people who just won't quit somebody when they probably don't have an edge anymore because they're just convinced that they're running bad and they won't really question it. So I think it's important to question yourself a little bit, if not just for game selection reasons, but also, to work on your game and improve. But I do think, for the most part, I feel like myself and people I know would benefit from, holding on to a little bit more confidence in those extended downswings.
Right. So there's a little bit of a kind of two sides to it. There's an excessive amount of questioning that maybe you're not as confident as you deserve to be. And
Yeah,
on the flip side, you've got players that that almost are like defiant in holding true to their confidence at times
yeah,
when they when they really shouldn't be.
yep,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is that a character thing? Do you think? Do you think that's something that has been a trait for you that you've sort of tended to be on this side of the coin, or have you ever been on the other side?
I've never been on the other side. I definitely always, um, not that I consider myself not confident in general, but I definitely always question. I do a lot of thinking. I overthink everything, and um, I will always, yeah, I guess, really question anything. I realize it's kind of vague, but there's there's nothing I wouldn't like think about in depth, and so even when I'm succeeding, and especially when I'm not succeeding in anything, I'm going to question my abilities and what I could do differently and what potentially is going wrong.
Right. So it's obviously a skill that's led to a lot of your success, and in isolated cases where you're actually in a downswing, it becomes a little
Yeah,
bit of a problem.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's fair to say.
Well, I remember you saying in one of your very well-reasoned 5,000 word essays that playing against tough competition is really necessary in order to get better. First, kind of a two-part question here is why do you think that, and what have you experienced from that way of approaching the game, and why do you think there are a lot of players who avoid tough matches and just play in soft games?
I guess the last question is the easiest part, and I think people avoid playing in tough games and for financial reasons. Well, mostly for financial reasons, also maybe for confidence reasons. They want to avoid downswings and keep their win rates higher so that the variance doesn't hit them as hard. And I completely understand that. And you know, definitely you can't go wrong playing in better games and not playing in games that you may not have an edge in, or even that you may have a small edge in, and then are susceptible to some big swings. So that's why people do it, and I completely understand that. I think that playing against tough players kind of forces you to really question your own game more. I think, for example, if you're just playing a hand against somebody who you know is just, like kind of doesn't really know what they're doing, loose passive fish, you don't have to consider the way that you're playing and your balance and, oh, if I do this, will he realize that I'm doing this? You just play your hand in the way that exploits him the most. But if you're playing against uh, whoever, Sauce is a good example because he's one of the tougher players I play against, and he's somebody that makes me question my game a lot. Um, he starts doing something like check raising a lot of turns. This is actually something he does more than most, or more than anybody really. And so when I see him starting to check raise a lot of turns, I have to think, okay, well, is my game plan susceptible to being check raised light on a lot of turns? And then I have to look at my flop betting tendencies, my turn betting tendencies. I have to look at how I play against turn check raises. If I am three betting balanced enough or wide enough on the turn, or if I'm slow playing enough against turn check raises, and then how often can he bet rivers comfortably against me? So people that are thinking about your game and analyzing it, and then are making adjustments, force you to question your own game in its entirety over the course of the session, or various sessions, because they're challenging each aspect of your game where they find a leak.
Right. So you think that you've got obviously a high level of analytical ability to dissect your own game. Um, that's a skill you've been developing over years. Do you think that there's just a lot of players out there that just don't have or have not, really worked to develop that kind of muscle, and they tend to be almost a little bit too passive in terms of how they're getting better, and so that is ultimately one reason why they're not going to be playing in tougher games, because they're not going to have the internal ability to understand what's going on and break it down for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it because a lot of people don't like to hear it, but I definitely think that people have kind of a ceiling on their ability and how big of a game they're able to beat, or how tough of competition they're able to beat. It's not just like any person can work extremely hard and get to the highest level. I think that you can definitely do a lot with your ability and how hard you work, and especially with some of the away from the table skills, like with mental game and game selections and the game selection, bankroll management, tilting, things like that. You can do very well. But yeah, I think there are people that wouldn't adjust quickly enough, or just don't have the capability to adjust quickly enough, or to be questioning the right things. Like, for example, with the Sauce thing, I don't know if he starts check raising a lot of turns, their line of logic might be, okay, well, I just need to three bet bluff turns now, which is one piece of the puzzle, but they're not really getting to the root of the problem, or the root of the adjustment, or questioning enough. And so I guess I'm rambling a bit, but to answer your question, yes, I don't think it's necessarily for everyone. In terms of, I don't think everyone can necessarily overcome some very tough competition, but I still think it's good to try, and it will improve your game. If not to the level of beating that tough competition, to at least a level of beating some easier competition for more money.
You bring up a really interesting point, which I think you're sort of alluding to, which is like the idea of talent, and how
Hmm.
much talent affects a person's potential, and obviously comparing
Yeah.
that to work ethic. And I don't know if you watch any of the ESPN 30 for 30s. They just had one on Bo Jackson, which I found incredible because I was still young-ish around when he was coming up, and
Yeah.
just
I didn't see that. I'd like to. I like Bo Jackson.
yeah, he did. It's disgusting how an incredible, just freakish athlete. And
Yeah.
hearing some great baseball players, football players talk about people just observing him through all parts of his when he was younger, when he was in college and whatnot. And there's somebody that there's just no way you can't say that there's not an incredible amount of talent that is just inborn. The guy barely had a work ethic. I mean,
Yeah.
he considered football his off season from baseball,
Wow.
and just didn't really even work out. He said that he had like barbells and like a full gym in his house just for show because people wouldn't believe him that he didn't work out.
Wow. That's
So
ridiculous.
I guess I wonder like if do you think I probably know the answer to this, but that there are innate talents for poker, or there's something innate that that you have that other players at your level have that other players don't. And it is hard to say that, and it's not to call you out as somebody who's inherently special for this reason, but like
Yeah.
because it feels even weird to even say it, but like you know obviously other people have other talents that you don't have, so it's not as if
Yeah.
um, you're better than them as a personal level, but there's talent, and that's a real phenomenon. I mean,
Yeah, it is a real thing, and I, I mean, to be fair, there are people I compete with and know personally at the high levels who don't have as much innate talent and have gotten there through work ethic. So it does happen, but yeah, I think there definitely are varying levels of talent, and there's only so much you can do with your talent. And I mean, I think you can find examples, more obvious examples of kind of innate talent with guys like Victor Blom, who has really never learned through any means other than just playing poker. And I mean, and even Tom Dwan is somebody who is really kind of just self-taught. He doesn't use any kind of HUD or tracking software, and neither does Victor. And doesn't really learn from other people or the forums. I mean, Tom's somebody who I know he considers me one of the best, and if he had some hands he played that he was questioning, I'm somebody he would come to. He's basically never asked me about a hand.
Hmm.
So like he's just both of them really have just kind of learned on their own. And I'm somebody who, though I do think that I have some innate talent, I've at least I've read books, I've watched videos, I've participated in forums, I've talked to a lot of people. There, I think more extreme examples of guys that just their talents taking them there. Yeah.
Did I read somewhere that you used to do improv comedy?
I did. Yeah.
Any parallels to how that's helped you in poker?
I guess I don't think it's helped all that much. I think the two main there are some parallels in terms of skills that are needed for both, but I think they're more innate skills than learned. One is just the ability to think quickly, and that is something I guess that you practice a little bit through improv. But the more important thing, which people might not expect, is that the key to, in my opinion, I guess the key to good improv, and like longer form improv, not just like quick little. They're like mini. There are a couple of different forms of improv, but longer form improv where you're like creating a 1 hour long like story from a series of scenes. It's very important to understand characters and their personal goals and motivation, and it's very important to develop the story, if that makes sense. And I think in poker, obviously in hand reading and hand representing, you're telling a story, and you're figuring out their story and seeing if it makes sense. And then as far as understanding the people you're playing against, I think that's huge. And while it is important to look at, let's say, a HUD and see that this person check raises X amount of flops, or they're loose pre-flop or whatever else it is, I think that you can get a feel for a person and learn to kind of understand their really like their fears and their goals in poker. There are some people that are afraid to make a big call and be wrong. There are other people that are afraid to make a big bluff and be wrong, but have no problem calling. I'm actually somebody who I learned long ago that I have very little emotional problem with making a big call and being incorrect, but it was more emotionally scary to bluff off a stack with no equity and get caught. When in terms of actual expected value, when you're looking at the plays, you're really they're similar in that you're just looking at how often it'll work and how often you need it to work. And so that's something that I've been aware of in myself and adjusted to. But I think that figuring out the kind of people or the kind of emotional attachments people have to different aspects of their poker game can help you adjust to them in ways that a HUD alone can't.
Yeah, you bring up a really interesting aspect, which is sort of like recognizing the mental games of your opponents. Is that something uh, that you're always doing? Is it just sort of a nuance that pops up when appropriate?
I think I am kind of always doing it subconsciously, and I actually think, we were talking about kind of talent, and I think that it's very difficult to spot potential as far as poker potential because it's not as simple as having a high IQ or being great at math or anything like that. Because there are plenty of examples of people who you know are great at one of those and not at poker, or great at poker and not one of those. But I do think that one of the many aspects is understanding people, and I think that's one of my stronger areas in poker. And I think that I am kind of, as I play, subconsciously figuring out the kind of person that my opponent is.
Right, and that probably actually led you to be good at improv as well.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Did you ever perform in New York City?
No, I never did. I actually, when I moved to New York, it was following a bunch of my friends that I had met in Madison through improv, and a lot of them continued to perform. But I kind of, once I stopped for a little while, I was really enjoying the freedom of having no schedule whatsoever, and never got back into it.
Speaking of the freedom of no schedule, from what I gather, you take quite a bit of time away from poker. Um, is that balance that you found good for poker? Do you feel like you need to have chunks of time where you're sort of just free and clear from it and can do what you need to?
I think it's good. Recently, I've spent more time away from poker kind of as a result of legislation, and it's not as easy for me to be outside of the U.S. all the time. And so I've been in the U.S. a decent amount and not able to play. So some of it's not really by choice. A realization I made, it's a while ago now. God, I've been playing for so long now.
Old man.
Yeah, I know, maybe 4 or 5 years, 5 years ago, I guess. I was very concerned with my hourly, and I was very concerned with making money and putting a lot of hours in. And I realized that at one point that, all hours aren't the same, first of all. And when I was making myself play, when I didn't feel like playing, my results suffered a lot and my happiness suffered. And I'm sure those are related. And so what I've done kind of since then, since that realization, is there are weeks where I'm completely obsessed with poker and I really want to play. And, during those weeks I play as much as I want, which is quite a lot. And then there are times where I just don't feel like it, either due to a downswing, just due to my mood, or due to like friends in town, whatever it is. And then I'll just not play. And I think I've been lucky that I've wanted to play enough that that I can put enough hours in. But I definitely think if you're able to want to play at least a reasonable amount, I would really take advantage of that and play when you want to and not play when you don't want to.
How does it feel to be immortalized in the most recent episode of the Micros?
It's funny. I just saw that came out, and I recorded it a long, long time ago. I mean, not a long, long time ago, but months
Oh, right,
and
because
months.
it was the hidden episode.
Yeah. I actually haven't even seen it yet, but I do kind of remember the script, and it was fun. But it's exciting. I was excited to be a part of it. It's obviously Micros is awesome.
Yeah, yeah, and you guys, you and Daniel in your vlog offs or your blog offs is
Yeah.
pretty funny way to end the show. So tell us about the new training site, Run It Once.
Yeah. We just launched. I mean, depending on when this gets out, within like a week ago or so, a little more. And yeah, I mean, I'm really excited about it. Not only just for the pros that we have, which I'm really excited about the lineup of pros we got, especially MTT pros. I'm a cash player strictly, and I am friends with cash players, and I obviously make cash videos, and I didn't really know much about the MTT market, and I kind of asked around everybody that I knew that knew about MTTs who they would want to watch videos from, and basically, I mean, I did approach every single one of those people and really got a lot of them. Not only am I excited about the pros we have, but I'm really excited about the website itself. It took a long time to build, and it's still being updated and fixed and new features added. But I just think that poker and poker training really needed a more professional, cleaner, better working system for watching videos, communicating on videos, and really just communicating in general. And I think that this could definitely be that, especially with some of the features that are on the way.
Can you maybe go into a little bit more detail? Because I'm interested in what you're hearing. Because I think I agree with you. I mean, like the poker training market is in its infancy, and if you've come up with a way to bring it into adolescence, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, the some of the features with the videos itself, I think are going to make it easier. I don't want to get into too much, but they're going to make it easier to kind of digest and give people the ability to learn from something quicker than just a 50-minute training video and have kind of more discussion blossom from that. And another thing that I can mention is we have a video recorder that works, but is a little bit too buggy to release. So we're fixing all the bugs. But essentially, what that's going to be is exactly what it sounds like. You could, on your computer from our website, just launch a pretty sleek video recorder and record your own screen playing, upload the video all for free. And then our hopes are that people are going to upload some videos of themselves playing for our pros and for each other to comment on. And I think that'll be another element of learning that hasn't really been touched on.
Right. So you're trying to create a more dynamic environment in a sense, kind of like what you do in the way that you learn.
Yeah, exactly.
That's sweet. So you're basically trying to replicate what you do. That's an amazing concept. Especially considering how well it's worked for you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's not what I was thinking, but it's not how I was thinking it. But it makes sense that I would have some ideas that relate to the way that I would want to learn.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think for people who are experiential learners, I think the video market can tend to be a little bit static because it sort of promotes passiveness.
Yeah.
One of the things I try to get a lot of my clients to do, and people that I've talked to about it, just like to be prepared for what you want to get out of a video, not even just to assume that everything you're going to hear is what you need to hear. It's make it more of an interaction, and it sounds like what you're doing is trying to facilitate that interaction so it's a little bit easier for members to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like. I just like even in the pros we signed. There's one pro, Adrian, who plays as Shark Nebula on Stars. He's, from my understanding, the winningest, or maybe one of the winningest. I think the winningest, but definitely the unanimous first choice for full ring, like mid stakes to high stakes, full ring, no limit. And we researched and got his name just from people who people wanted to see, but in watching his videos, I was super excited because he plays a style completely different from all of the other winning regulars. And a lot of the things he does, I think people will view as bad, actually. And every once in a while, there's something that I don't fully understand. But there are a lot of plays that I've seen out of him and explanations I've seen out of him that are things that even I've never thought of and that make a lot of sense. And I'm really excited about. Like, I personally am watching all of his videos. I don't have time to watch every single video that we release, but I watch a good bit of them, and I definitely am watching all of his because, whether or not, even if, let's say, and actually I think he plays extremely well, but even if let's say a third of his plays somehow were bad, the fact that he's forcing you to think actively about hands in ways that you haven't thought about them and situations you haven't put yourself in, I think that's really the best way to learn.
Right, so you're a little bit of a Cy Sperling here, where you're not only the hair club president, but you're also a client.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Well, Phil, I wish you really well with the site, man, and
Thank you.
really appreciate you coming on today.
I'm happy to. Thanks, man.
Thanks so much to Phil for coming on the show today. Really, really insightful stuff, as I'm sure all of you expected from him. If you want more information or you want to sign up to Phil's new training site, go to runitonce.com, and you can also follow Phil on Twitter. He's at Phil Galfond. Of course, you can also follow me on Twitter at Jared Tendler. And I also want to let you know that because of the holidays, Amazon is running a promotion. If you haven't already picked up my book, you can get it for $10 off. Amazon's in control of that, so I'm not sure how long that's going to last. And you can also pick up a free copy of the audiobook. Just go to jaredtendlerpoker.com, look for the link at the top, and it'll give you information on how you can pick up a copy of the audiobook. That's all for this episode of the Mental Game Radio Show. I'm your host, Jared Tendler. Until next time, I wish you all very well.